Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. This is the Pinwheels pregame show, bringing you White Sox talk every Wednesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I am Mitchell Kaminsky. The White Sox just 5 losses away from the 1962 Mets modern day record with 10 games left to go. That'll be interesting to see if they can get it. It seems like a foregone conclusion they're going to get it. But Andrew Benintendi, he's been heating up, and the schedule kind of favorable. They got one more against Anaheim, and they go to San Diego for 3. That's going to be tough. What ultimately will probably decide this is their 3-game homestand, final home game of the homestand of the season against the Angels, who they're trying to avoid their worst franchise record too. So true battle of mediocrity coming to the South Side next week. Now, the last couple of shows, we've been really talking about focus on Chris Getz and a lot of his offseason moves, because he was talking about how, these are the cards we were dealt. And a lot of the first free agents that he brought in have not panned out, where he deserves a lot of blame for this train wreck. And it's been negative most of the season. Obviously, they have lost 162 games. There's not a whole lot to be positive about, especially when Jerry Reinsdorf's still your owner. That said, we're going to try and focus on some of the positives today, specifically with this article that came out on ESPN from Jeff Passan. If you have not read it yet, I encourage you to do so. But I want to talk about a couple of the things that really stood out to me that kind of showed, how the White Sox have gotten here to this point, and at least explaining the thought process. Not saying I agree with the White Sox thought process on a lot of stuff, but just kind of explaining, why they're doing what they are doing. So just after last week's show, it came out because Jerry Reinsdorf had this statement that he released. It sounded eerily similar to the statement he had released a year before, when he called the 2023 team as the worst season of baseball I've ever had to endure. And then the 2024 team basically said, hold my beer. So he's coming out, basically, I understand fans are disappointed. Whatever, Jerry. We don't need your lip service. But part of the thing the White Sox have done, and this is where I will give Chris Getz a little bit of credit here. And we said this a little bit during the offseason too. The White Sox have had a history of just promoting guys from within. That's why we were stuck with Kenny Williams and then Rick Hahn for decades. Honestly, until Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams got fired, or Kenny Williams, I should say, when he got fired last year, that was the first time in my life that Kenny Williams had not been a part of the White Sox organization. It's crazy. They love promoting guys from within. Even the general manager search, they half-assed it. That's how they landed on Chris Getz, because they just wanted to promote someone from within. Now, Chris, and I'll give him a little bit of credit. This is where I want to give him a little bit of credit here. They are making an effort to bring in some outside voices into this front office. We saw it when they brought in Brian Bannister to help with the pitching, Paul Yanish, former college coach, former major leaguer, and then with Josh Barfield, the former assistant GM in Arizona, who would really or now he's our former assistant GM, but he was a big part of the Diamondbacks player development. If you remember, that team made the World Series just a couple years ago, and they got some young talent on that team. So one of the things that Jeff Passan pointed out in this article, I'm going to read this little clip for you here. Another person that they added, who we had not talked about, kind of flew under the radar, was this guy, Brian Muller, a former Harvard lacrosse player who went on to become a Marine and Navy SEAL. He then got a law degree from Georgetown. So he is now the White Sox new Director of Leadership, Culture, and Continuing Education. Now, culture is one of those big buzzwords that I think gets overused a lot, but it's been talked about a lot, specifically with the White Sox in that 2021 span, 2020 span, when it looked like they're going to get into their contention window. What was something that was commonly said? Man, the locker room culture doesn't look all that good. We had reports of Dallas Keuchel coming out talking shit. He gets traded. Liam Hendricks on the radio talking about him. Tony La Russa's in there. Oh, can you remember Mercedes bat flip? Is that going to be allowed after, pimping the home run against the Twins? He got yelled at. What's going on there? There's Yasmani Grandal slapping Tim Anderson. A lot of talk about the culture or lack thereof with the White Sox. So I find it interesting. The White Sox now have a Director of Leadership, Culture, and Continuing Education. So he came into the organization with no baseball experience. Law degree, former Navy SEAL, played lacrosse. No baseball experience in there. He is kind of overseeing what Passan's calling an overhaul of the front office. So they want to make a variety of changes in these next coming years, which they're saying is going to be like a multi-year project. And this is according to Passan. Sources said optimizing resources, scaling processes, and connecting departments is basically going to be the focus of this multi-year project. And Jerry Reinsdorf, who is 88, is backing it after years of winning now. He understands that this is also from Passan, quote, he understands that doing so with the sort of roster that Chicago currently has is simply untenable unless he wants to spend heavily in free agency, something he has railed against for decades and never done himself as an owner. So that I did find very interesting. The White Sox, instead of going out and, getting their Band-Aid solutions, because it is true, Jerry doesn't like to spend a ton of money on free agents. That's how we landed on Andrew Benintendi as our highest paid player in franchise history. I don't think it was an unreasonable contract at the time, but with other solutions out there, that was the one they felt was going to be, that was going to be the quick fix. Or when they go out and play it cheap, hey, we need someone in right field. Let's go play it cheap and trade for Nomar Mazara or sign a John Jay. So that money that would go to them, the $2 to $4 million there, they're now saying, you know what? This isn't working. We've been doing the same thing over and over again for years, these Band-Aid patchwork solutions. Because this team is so bad, and it's not going to be fixed in an offseason, even if you were to spend a lot of money, I still don't think you can fix all the holes on this team in one offseason. Let's take that money we would spend in free agency, invest in the front office, and overhaul how we do things around here. And you know what? That sucks as a fan because we're going to have to watch the same team again. And because initially when they came out and said, hey, it doesn't look like we're going to be spending a ton in free agency. We got a lot of guys here that we think are going to be able to develop over the offseason. You hear that, and it pisses you off from Chris Getz. Like, what the hell are we talking about? You put this horrible team on the field we had to sit through, and now we have to watch it again, basically. But if they're going to be investing that money in the front office, and there truly is going to be an overhaul in how they do things, and they're going to take some of that extra money that would be spent there to make the organization and the front office and the structure of how they do things better, you know what? I'm all for it. And that also kind of explains why they wanted to trade away Garrett Crochet, because they don't feel like within the next 3 years, this team's so far off that we got to get this thing right first. Let's get, because leadership, it comes from the top down in these well-run organizations. So let's get the top right, and hopefully and everything else will start to fall in place once we got a good structure in place. Structure of this organization is kind of broken. So, that's going to be frustrating for fans. Let's be honest. No one wants to watch this team get trotted out there once again. So, it is going to be frustrating. We got Andy here. Thanks for hopping on once again, Andy. And he brings up a point. Change only happens when they actually commit to what they say. The track record says not to trust them. And I agree. They have not earned the benefit of the doubt. They haven't, because they say you're going to do this overhaul, but who's the guy that's in the most important position right now? Chris Getz. That's part of the old regime. So it's kind of hard to trust him there. But Getz, again, he did bring in some outside voices last offseason. And if this whole overhaul thing is true by this Mahler, I'm willing to embrace it, because there's not a whole lot else to really embrace on the field with this team. Another thing that he brought up that was interesting, and I thought this was kind of interesting around the leadership thing, and I'm starting to warm up on bringing Grady Sizemore back for another season, especially after reading what he had to say. So Passan, his whole thing was he spent basically a week with the Chicago White Sox, was in the clubhouse listening to guys like talk. And a big sentiment like a lot of the players had, it's like, yeah, we've been really unlucky this year. You had that home run that got robbed against the Rangers. The other day, they had a ball that was hit 106 miles an hour, and Jose Ramirez makes a really lucky catch, falling down, where the White Sox, Crochet was yeah, I'll give up a bloop single, and it'll somehow fall, and we'll hit the same type of ball, and the guy on the other team will make a diving catch. So it's very frustrating, but they've been able to keep, despite all these losses, because most of these teams, this would kill them. If this was the 2022 team that went 80-80, I think they had a worse demeanor in the clubhouse from what it sounds like than these guys. Because a lot of these guys are and this goes to the point of over the offseason too, which is I got duped by this. They're bringing in all these guys that are hungry to stay in the league. right? Like they probably wouldn't be playing on many other teams. You look at that Aaron Bummer trade, like Nicky Lopez, a lot of these guys were probably going to get DFA'd by the Braves. So like on a good team, a Nicky Lopez is like a utility player, where now he gets a chance to be an everyday starter. So of course his demeanor is going to be a lot better. Obviously he does not like, they don't want to be losing, but look, like I'm getting a chance to play in the big leagues every day. So they're going to take a good attitude. And then a lot of these backup guys that are in there probably wouldn't be in the major leagues on a good team or even a contending team. They would be back down to the minors. They're getting an opportunity. Like Sean Burke, for example, like Davis Martin. They'd be pitching for many other teams? Probably not. But the White Sox, they get an opportunity. So because of that, they said despite all of these losses, 116 of them to this point, the locker room, surprisingly, like not as bad as you would think. Obviously, they're upset after losses, but the way he was describing it, it's like, yeah, we're upset off these losses, but we're not undeterred. We're going to keep showing up and working. And you hear them say that all the time in these post-game press conferences. They don't really know whether you believe it or not. It's like, what else are they going to say? Like, of course, they're just going to show up, like work hard every day. Like, but like it genuinely sounds like, hey, like this is a good group of guys that like playing with each other. They're happy to be in the major leagues right now. And they're trying to win. The results aren't coming. They're frustrated, but they're not going to let them get them down the rest of the way. A big reason why, and it was interesting too, what he's bringing up, and this goes back to the point where I would be open to bringing Grady Sizemore back another year, because you're going to bring this team back for another season for the most part. A lot of the same faces. You want a guy that's going to be able to help develop these guys and guide them the best way possible and keep that morale up, because once they if it's not, it could get even uglier really quickly. Now I think it's going to be hard to lose this many games again, even if they were trying to, because they have had a lot of bad luck. Obviously, this is a very bad team, but losing close to 120 games, maybe more than that. I mean, you got to have, the Mets did it when they were an expansion team. So it's very hard in today's modern era, because you're gonna fluke your way into a couple wins. But they say with Grady Sizemore, his big thing is he's positive, but he's not phony. It doesn't come across as fake. He'll come to players because he's done a bunch of different stuff in his career. He's been an all-star. One of the best players in the MLB. And then obviously he's suffered some injuries. He's had to be that veteran. So I think the way it sounds like the way he's able to connect with a lot of different guys, because he's been through a lot of the same stuff that these guys have been going through as players. And it sounds like to me, he will go around talking to guys. He's able to connect with them really well. And he's able to stay positive without being phony. There was a game that they were saying he came in and everyone was a little down or whatever. And he's like, you know what? Hey, you can turn the music back up. You guys put in a good effort. Didn't happen. We'll get him again tomorrow. So if we're going to be that bad, why not bring him back for one more year? I'm not saying this is the guy that you want to have as your manager when you're contending, but I think it's going to be hard to get a really good manager in this job. And why spend money on this great manager if you're not going to be winning many games anyway? I would be willing to give the guy another shot. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't do a thorough job search, but I do think Grady Sizemore should at least be in consideration for the job. And he says, I actually do believe the players seem to get along. Even our superstars, potential players, seem to be grounded and not divas. Yeah, I mean, and it'd be very easy. The only guy that you really see on the bench that's noticeably terrible body language, because we'd see this, it was Miguel Vargas for a while. For the most part, you look at the bench, it's they don't seem you would think the overall body language and everything would be a lot worse than what it is. If I were to drop you in and you had no context of this team, I don't think if you would watch their demeanor, just how they go about their business every day, you wouldn't think they're a 116 loss team if you had no context of what was going on with the White Sox season. Now, all of this said, this does not diminish the fact that there is still a lot of issues, and White Sox fans genuinely have a reason to be pissed off. I'm not trying to be some blowhard for the team here. You listen to the last couple of episodes. We're dishing out, blame where blame is due, and there is a lot of it to go around here. But I'm at least encouraged by the fact, yes, it sounds like, and this goes back to they're trying to establish this culture thing. The players seem to be in a good mindset. Grady seems to be doing his job as the interim, at least making sure they're coming to the field ready to play every night and expecting to win, coming in with a chance to win. It's not oh man, we think we're going to lose today. No, they're coming in there hey, we're trying to win games, expecting to win games, just not falling our way. And now they're trying to overhaul the front office on top of that. So at least that is semi encouraging. If you're looking for some silver lining out of a really, really crappy season, I was like, okay, that seems to be encouraging. Now, some other things that people were getting upset about this week, just a couple of headlines. Michael Kopech was on the podcast Foul Territory, and he was talking about, in the headline, like what's changed with him with the Dodgers. And he's like, well, it's the headline, the way they had it written was like, yeah, I'm not throwing fastballs as much. And immediately White Sox Twitter up in this uproar. Oh man, back into the White Sox trying to get him to do the same thing. They pulled up that tweet of one of his quotes he had after one of his saves. If you actually listen to the clip, he said, this is something the White Sox are telling me at the end of my career there as well. So he acknowledges the fact that, yeah, White Sox coaches were telling me this as well. I was starting to implement it a little bit more. But what he said was very interesting. It's not that, like, right now, it's not that I'm not throwing more fastballs. It's like fastball's my best pitch. I'm going to throw the fastball. The difference is I'm starting to throw it consistently with conviction. Because midway through the season with the White Sox, he was saying, like, yeah, there's been some outings. I would throw it 29 out of 30 times. But I'd be a little unsure about it. I'd be throwing it. Wasn't throwing it with, like, conviction or whatever. And when he's really throwing, like, reaching back and, throwing that thing like he knows he could, that's how you're going to get that extra run on the fastball. And that's what makes it so tough to hit. So he's like, it's not even that. Yes, obviously, he's like, I'm doing a better job of mixing up my pitches to keep hitters off balance. But he's like, I think the real turnaround here is knowing I'm in these important situations where we need to win games. I'm throwing my fastball like I mean it. He's like, that's something I got away from midway through the season. So I don't think he was even trying to throw shade at the White Sox or necessarily ignoring them. I think a big thing with him was simply confidence. And he's had to struggle with a lot throughout his major league career and everything that he went through in Chicago between injuries and off the field drama and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think he was finally in a much better headspace in LA on a team with a lot of professionals, a history of winning. And so, they're telling you it. It's like, it kind of goes back to when I would be playing like Little League. My dad would tell me stuff all the time. But when your coach tells you the same thing, for whatever reason, sometimes it just clicks. Like, you have the same person telling you the same thing, and it just clicks. And I think that's something that it probably just clicked a little bit better in LA. I don't think he was blatantly ignoring Chicago coaches, because he acknowledged it in the thing if you listen to the clip. So let's not get all upset at Michael Kopech for ignoring coaches in Chicago, because I don't think that's necessarily what happened. Other things to note from this past week, Sean Burke, he made his MLB debut. It looked really good. It looked really good. And he made his debut as a reliever. He made his first career start the other night and picked up the win. And that's kind of what helped them clinch their first series win. And Burke's curveball, man, it was nice. What impressed me about it, he would throw this curveball, and there'd be times it would be like a big looping 12-6. And then there'd be other times it'd be the same pitch and it'd be like a lot sharper too. But he balanced it well. He threw 30 curveballs, 30 fastballs. I think they said they mixed in like 29 changeups in there, or it was like 27 sliders, excuse me. So he had a very well-balanced pitch mix. The stuff looked sharp, man. It looked sharp. Some of those hitters baffled at that curveball. So that was kind of nice to see as well. Last night in their 5-0 loss, Jake Eder finally got his shot. Things didn't go great for him. He went 2 innings. He gave up 1 run. That run came, and this has been the scouting report on Jake Eder, was the control has kind of gotten away from him ever since he underwent surgery. So remember, he used to be a top pitching prospect in baseball. Then he had Tommy John surgery because he blew out his elbow. And then he broke his foot on top of that, so he didn't get back into pitching till last June. But he had a really good start right before the White Sox traded for him. After coming to Chicago, things were ugly. His first season, his ERA was over 11. He got lit up in the Arizona Fall League. A lot of that was sporadic control, and he lost 3 miles an hour on his fastball too, which also didn't help. This year in AAA, opponents were hitting over 300 against him. AA, I believe they were hitting like 286. So I think that's really hurt, but that's the luxury you have, going back to why a lot of these guys are positive. Would he be getting an MLB opportunity with any other team right now? No. But the White Sox, it's like, okay, hey, we got nothing else to lose. Let's give him a shot. So I do hope he pans out, but that does look like yet another whiff that the White Sox have had. But that was kind of the story last night. He had a 9-pitch at bat against the Angels catcher that he was able to end by getting a looking strikeout, which was nice. But right before that, the run scored because he thrown a wild pitch, and then he walked a guy, and the next inning he hit a batter too. So a little bit of control issues there with old Sean Burke. Andrew Benintendi, highest payer. We're just going through some notes that I've noticed from this past week. Andrew Benintendi, highest player, franchise history. Love saying that because it's just funny every time. Yasmani Grandal wasn't funny enough. He's been turning things around at the plate. He's been hot. He had a walk-off homer. Actually, I think the White Sox 2 most entertaining victories of the season have come courtesy of Benintendi with the 2 walk-offs. Frank Thomas had a very interesting breakdown on this on the White Sox postgame show. In mid-June, he was showing Benintendi had this big high leg kick, and it was kind of messing up his timing. And you could tell that he was kind of struggling with timing most of the season. But, big leg kick in June. Now, if you watch him swing and you look at a clip of his home runs the White Sox posted, it's a little toe tap. Not nearly, and he thinks that's really helped with his timing. It kind of led to this resurgence for Benintendi, which has actually been going on for a little bit. Let me pull up his numbers these past couple of games here. But it's been going on for almost a month now, but you really can't, people don't notice because obviously not a whole lot of people watching this team anymore, deservedly so. So it's funny on the season, he's only hitting 226, right? Like it's not good. But in his last 30 games, he's hitting 264 with a 495 slugging percentage. And he's also got 6 home runs, 18 RBIs. For a guy that's got only 19 on the season, that's a big jump. So if we had Benintendi throughout his whole career, even last year, when we were supposed to be contending, quote unquote, or not last year, they lost 100 games last year. But even last year, I would have been fine when they brought him in initially. If he's hitting 267, 270, 20 homers a year, I'll take that. That's fine. I mean, that's not... for what they're paying him, I think that's reasonable. So I'm hoping that this is a long-term fix heading into next year because they need as much support in that lineup as they can get. Because there's not a whole lot of veterans you watching this thing that can really carry a team. There's no protection for any of their guys. Robert's got to step up, but this is another one with Benintendi. You're one of the few veterans in the clubhouse. You got to step out and help out a lot of these younger guys. Also, big news that came out from this week. Here we got Andy too. Yeah, and Vaughn too. To your point, Vaughn's been hitting. The thing that's most frustrating with Andrew Vaughn is he was projected to be this star, and they kind of threw him in a terrible situation. Come to the majors with very little after just getting drafted, with hardly any minor league at bats. Learn how to hit major league pitching, one of the toughest things to do in sports. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to throw you out in a position that you've never played before on a team that's expected to win the division this year. So there's pressure. You can't suck out there. Good luck. Yeah, obviously that's going to stunt his development. So I am not surprised it hasn't been overwhelming yet, but I don't think Vaughn's been bad. He's been a serviceable major league hitter. He's not going to be a star anytime soon. He's not making any all-star games, but I think you could do a lot worse with AB. To answer Andy's question here too, he asked if he and AB start to show some promise next season, you think it'll be enough for White Sox fans to bury the hatchet on their previous terrible play? Probably not. They hold grudges once you form your opinion on a lot of these guys. I feel like it's just kind of set in stone. People wouldn't budge. Moncada's been a debate who we're going to get to in a second for years. I feel like once people get their opinion on these guys, they kind of bury in or dig in. Especially if next year too, they lose, say, 105 games, which I think is a reasonable expectation. But Vaughn and Benintendi are hitting 220 home runs apiece. No one's going to be watching. They're just going to see the win-loss record after April. And Vaughn's notoriously started off slow these last couple seasons. So, no, I don't think it'll be enough. I think they should. I mean, I got nothing against either of these guys. I'm willing to change my tune on Benintendi if he's putting together a lot of professional at-bats. He's hitting 267, 270, 15 to 20 home runs. Same with Vaughn, right around that range. All right, I'll take that. I'm not going to be angry at them moving forward. The league's last 10 games too. Outside of the White Sox trying to avoid that all-time loss record, his last 10 games of the season, going to be the last 10 games we see Yoan Moncada in a White Sox uniform. He was activated finally off the IL since being there in April. Since joining the White Sox in his 9 seasons, he has played in just 62% of their games. Now, you might have noticed these last couple of games, he wasn't in the lineup Either game. He's been back for 2 games, has not been in the lineup for either game. This is smart. This is a smart move from Grady Sizemore. And I think Pedro probably would throw Moncada back on there, just go, oh, he's been in the league a while, he's a veteran, whatever. No. They're playing it smart. He's like, look, we're prioritizing playing Miguel Vargas, Brian Ramos at third base. We'll put in Moncada where we can, but what good is playing him the rest of the way? It's not going to do anyone any good, even if he has a good 10 games. They're not picking up that $25 million option. They're not. No teams, he's not even going to sniff $25 million in free agency. This is how disappointing he's been. So I am glad they were like, look, we're playing Ramos, we're playing Vargas. If Vargas is at third, I'm going to put Ramos at DH or vice versa. That's, you know what? That's how it should be. These 2 guys that are going to probably be with the team next year, give them all the at-bats the rest of the way. Moncada, it's a little sad too. I think if it wasn't for that 2019 season, you wouldn't have been as disappointed with them because like that always lingered over for like years where it'd be like, man, but like just look what he did in 2019. You know, the 305 batting average, hit 25 homers, almost 80 RBIs. Like it was like, man, if we could just get that, like we know he can be good, especially watching on defense. He's an excellent defender. You know he can be good. You knew the talent was there, and it just never came together. And a big reason why it was consistently not playing. Ironically, too, because he gets the bad rap for the bad body language, and like it did seem like he was dragging out that rehab for a lot longer than they should have. Like, you know, it didn't seem like he wanted to be back anytime soon. Like they had to delay it for like extra soreness. But ironically, the reason he got hurt was because he was already dealing with hip issues. Like Pedro Grifol came to the game, he got hurt back in April, like the day before, and was like, yeah, you know, he's dealing with some hip soreness and whatnot, but he's going to try and play through it because like they were very shorthanded at that time. Eloy was still on the IL. Robert was still on the IL. So Moncada's trying to be out there, help this team. He hurt himself trying to leg out an infield single. So it's kind of ironic that the guy who is notoriously labeled as lazy, bad body language, his final season with the Sox, he doesn't play most of the season because he hurt himself trying to hustle out of the box. It's kind of sad, but a summary for Moncada's career, basically. Very misunderstood play. It would be weird, too, because he would work great. He would strike out a ton, but he'd also walk a lot, too. Like, he would work these great at-bats. I remember his rookie year, he'd come in there, and he had all these strikeouts, but a lot of it would be he had a great eye at the plate. He would take these borderline pitches that weren't strikes, but because he was a rookie, he's not getting the benefit of the borderline call. So he'd strike out looking a ton because, you know, he's a rookie. And he'd take these borderline pitches. So, like, he was always a very, out of all the players that didn't pan out in these White Sox rebuild, he was definitely the hardest one to explain because I think he probably had more overall talent than Eloy Jimenez. He didn't have the same power as him, but he's a much better defender, much better, well-rounded hitter. Outside of Luis Robert, like, he was probably one of the more talented guys in that core and just never came together. So, a bittersweet end to his career where we won't see the rest of the way. We got David in the bottom. Who's going to be head coach for next year? They're still deciding. I think Grady Sizemore legitimately has a shot, but they're still interviewing. All they said was, we are looking for a guy that's currently in a major league uniform right now. I've heard the Tigers pitching coach floated around, but I can't imagine there's a long line of candidates wanting to take that job. But it's been kind of, we'll see. They think it's going to be a coach from another team that's been in uniform who's not currently managing right now. But I would not be surprised if the interim Grady Sizemore gets serious consideration, just given how the guys have responded to him since he has taken over after Pedro got fired. So we'll see. Battle of mediocrity next week coming up with against the Angels. Once again, final game against the Angels here tonight. And they got an off day. They'll travel to San Diego. I will be watching these games because I'm in the minority. A lot of people want them to get this all-time losing record. I don't. I think the point's been made. The fact that they've even sniffed it. It's one of the worst teams in modern MLB history. But I don't want to have the label of being the team. Yeah, we were worse than 1962 Mets, who were a damn expansion team. I don't want that label. That will stick with us forever. The point's already been made that sweeping changes need to happen. Like, if this season doesn't send the message, I don't know what will. So 119 losses compared to 120. Like, I don't think it's really going to make a difference if they get the record or not, as far as Jerry being like, well, now we got to make changes. So all-time modern loss record is from the 62 Mets, who lost 120 games. White Sox currently right now at 116. Here to answer your question, David, they got 10 games left. So they got to win, or they cannot lose more than, if they lose 5 games, they will break that record. So going to be interesting to see. Got to play above 500 ball. Something the White Sox really haven't done this year. So unfortunately, I think they're going to get stuck with it. But I still don't want it. That'd suck. That would suck 10 years from now, looking back, like, ugh, we the worst team in modern MLB history. Brutal. It is almost comical, though, watching how bad this team has been. That's all I have for you. We'll check in same time next week at noon for the Pinwheels pregame show, giving you your weekly White Sox talk here on Pinwheels and Ivy. Thank you all so much for joining us. I know it's not fun going on this ride with such a terrible team, but hopefully, within the next decade, maybe things will get better. I sure hope so. Have a wonderful rest of your week.